RH, a company I've never heard of, but was asked to take a look at. Restoration Hardware reports earnings on Thursday. And so here's a little technical analysis to get you prepared for that report. Let's go. So this video goes out to Cooler Hand, who said this was a great video in reference to the Adobe earnings preview. Thanks so much, Cooler Hand, and asked if I could do one on RH. And I'll be honest with you, I've never heard of the company. Restoration Hardware, they're going to be reporting the same time that Adobe does. So technical analysis, let's jump into the charts and take a look at potentially what could happen with this company. All right, so RH, I wanted to share this information about the company. This is from TradingView, but it says RH operates as a holding company which operates its business through its subsidiary Restoration Hardware Incorporated. It offers furniture, lighting, textiles, bathware, decor, outdoor and garden, as well as baby and child products. The company operates an integrated business with multiple channels of distribution, including galleries, source books, and websites. The company was founded by Stephen J. Gordon in 1980 and is headquartered in Corte Madera, California. So there's a little background on this. And so we can see that it's related to the housing sector with furniture, lighting, textiles, bathware, etc. So more than likely, this stock has been impacted by the weakness in the housing market. So I'm guessing that this one's been beat up pretty bad. We'll take a look at the chart. So here is the chart on Restoration Holdings, RH ticker symbol. And let's just start by looking at the all-time high up here at 745.30. And that was hit in August of 2021, actually August 2nd. And then since then, you could see what has happened, a massive drop, massive decline. And currently we are sitting on a strong moving average, the 50-day simple moving average. And let's jump over to the daily chart and just take a look at where this stock is in relation to its moving averages. And as we can see, it is currently finding support off of that 50 SMA on the daily. And above it, overhead, you can see that it's got every single thing for it to fight through. I mean, you want to talk about a challenge and a treacherous journey to even gaining some traction. Well, that's what the scenario is for RH. Because if we just look above it here, we can see that we have the 50-day exponential moving average in addition to the 100 exponential moving average. And then we get into the big boys, the SMAs, the simple moving averages, which are stronger, which is where big institutions typically do their buying and selling. And so you can see that these are going to function as resistance points. We have the 100 SMA on the daily here at this 258 range. And you can see the last 3 times it's tested this area, it's got rejected. So back here in March, 2 days in a row, and then again in April, on April 2nd, tested that 100 and got rejected. And then you go above that, you have the 100 SMA on the monthly, you have the 200 EMA on the daily, the 100 SMA on the weekly, and you get it. I'm not going to read all these to you, but there's quite a bit of fighting that this thing has to do to move. And then I also want to just look at this area right here. And let me zoom in for a second. But we could see that this candle from April 2nd, and this is the last time it really retested that 100 SMA in the daily, a gap was created. So let me just put a little box here so we can take a look at this. Where is my box? Where is my box? Thank God for editing. All right, so here we go. So there's a little tiny gap right here that potentially could be filled. And if we just drag this over a little bit, that is a price area I would be watching that realistically it could hit off of good earnings. Because again, to get way up here, it's got a lot that it has to fight through. But in order to make a move back up here to, let's say that this is a double bottom and this is its neckline, it doesn't have as much to fight through. In fact, all that it has to fight through here is that 50 EMA on the daily. So this would be one area to watch, this 233 mark. Now that would be a massive move. It's probably not going to gap up that hard. But if it does gap up and let's say gets above that 50 and it climbs and pushes, that 233 would be an area of significance to watch because it tried to fill this gap back here May 12th and May 13th. It wasn't able to. It dropped back down. So that's where we would want to watch. And then also note too that if it were to push up back into this area, what we're then going to create is a double bottom pattern here, right? So keep an eye on that. That would be right at that neckline. And then if it could push out of there, it might be able to do some damage. But again, it's going to have quite the tough time because of everything that's in front of it. But what has happened the last few times that it's reported earnings? Again, I really like to take a look at what has occurred the last few times that companies have reported earnings just to get a feel for, is it have a streak of wins? Does it have a streak of losses? I think we can anticipate what we're going to see here on this one. But again, going back to when RH tested that 100 SMA daily, it gapped down on earnings, right? So gap down in April, and this gap down from close to close is about $99. So that was a significant drop. So we see that this thing could have some pretty big moves. So we had a gap down in April. Let's just keep going back and let's check and see what it did in December. And this thing actually had a nice gap up. So from its close to its next day's close, it had a $64 move. So 16.88%. It was up in the 445 region. So that's a pretty big move there. So the last two times, so it's one of two in terms of gapping up. So let's go back one more time. We could see here, this is September 12th. What did we get here? We got another gap up, and this was a $65 gap, all right? And it did get above a lot of the moving averages. This was the last time it was above everything after that push here into October, but then it sold back down. So 2 out of the last 3 times we had gap ups. Now let's go back to, this was June. So June of last year, so about 1 year ago. Let's measure this out from its close to its close the next day. We had about a $47 move to the downside. All right, so there's another gap down. So out of the last 4 earnings reports, we had 2 gap ups, 2 gap downs, and let's just do one more to break the tie here. So this would be March of 2024, and what did it have here? It had a gap up, and we had about a $51 move. So if there's one thing that stands out here about RH Restoration Holdings on its earnings reports is that it does move significantly. So we had a span there really from $40 to $99. So the one thing to keep in mind, this could be a big mover. And in terms of, is there an edge either way? No, because it's pretty even. It's pretty split in terms of gapping up and gapping down. Last June when it reported it gapped down. September it gapped up. We had a gap up, or excuse me, we had a gap. Yeah, we had a gap up in December. And then we had that gap down in April. So there's the probabilities really don't lean either way, but just in looking at this from a structural standpoint where we are, again, there's the possibility that a double bottom pattern can be created here. And we have this gap to fill. And so just looking at how much this has moved in the past, a move up into that gap to fill that gap, a $49 move isn't off the table. So if there is a bullish push here and this thing rockets, that will be the target to watch, watching that 234 price area to see if it could fill that gap. And then from there, if it would fill that gap, you can see all these resistances above. We have this 100 EMA on the daily, but then you go to the 100 SMA on the daily, the 100 SMA on the monthly. So it would have a lot to fight through there. But this is where we would want to watch in terms of our bullish target is filling this gap here. And I'll put target, bullish target, and gap fill. All right, so we'll see if we get that. And in terms of a move down, we're looking at recent supports. And we do have a recent support here. Again, we could see that this thing bottomed out at 123.27. And from there, it has started to climb. And we do, again, we have a bottoming structure that's coming in here. We do have higher lows that are coming into play. So we're going to have to see if that structure wants to hold. But if it does gap down from here, and we would mark this out, we would want to keep an eye on this most recent low here, and that's going to be 166.56 would be an area we would watch. So that'd be a pretty significant drop. And then from there, we have the next recent low, which is near this point of control, and that's about 147.95. And then if it was just god awful, we'd be coming down here to this 123.27. So more than likely, since this thing is so beat up, we would want to watch this price area, this most recent low, for a bounce. If it does gap down, so I'm going to put bearish target. And if it were to break that, then we could be looking at a move down here to this 147.57. So, and let's just go back to the left to see if it's hung out down in this price area before. And it has, but notice that this used to be a resistance that is now serving as a support. So let's see if it can bounce out of here. Again, companies that are beat up like this, potentially they offer great opportunities. And that could be the case here. Maybe there's capitulation. The bears are happy with their profits. But from a structural standpoint, again, higher lows, we are setting up a double bottom pattern. We do have this gap to fill to the upside. The better opportunity is going to be to the upside since this thing is beat up so much. Let's just measure out how far this has dropped since January. And this is quite the drop here. From January, I mean, that was to its April lows, 73%. So there's quite a bit of opportunity for this one if it wants to move higher. Let me just scroll through the headlines here and just reading through this headline here. It says RH seen with big execution risks ahead. RH continues to face external volatility as tariffs, economic uncertainty, and a slowing luxury housing market threaten demand for its high-end furnishings. UBS analyst said in a note, at the same time, the company is making a lot of smart moves internally, working to transform its assortment, expand in the US and abroad, and add further promotions. But in such an environment, those actions load on uncertainty for RH's performance and boost volatility around earnings. Said simply, there's a lot of execution risk ahead. And so that clarifies things. And I wasn't really thinking about this before I did this analysis, but the reason why there's so much pressure on this stock and why it came in hard here in January is because of tariffs, because luxury markets have been hit pretty hard. This is a luxury company related to housing. So that's why it's getting hit, because of the tariffs. And so that's got to be taken into consideration. Now, if these tariffs back off, maybe it could get some pop, some push, some love, but that is why people are probably being cautious with this stock. Now, there is upside opportunity here, but it is going to carry some inherent risk because of what is happening with the greater economy and with tariffs. So there you have it, a fun take on the ticker RH, a company I've never looked at before. Let's see what happens with this company on earnings on Thursday. I'm really excited to see how it plays out now, being the first time I looked at the chart. Let's see if that gap gets filled or there's more concern around tariffs and this thing dumps again. Let me know your thoughts. What do you think will happen with RH? Put it in the comments below. Smash that subscribe button. And if there's a ticker you want me to check out, let me know. I'll make it happen for you. Make it a great day.